So this is a breakdown or summary of one of my other clients that I've worked with. Um, he's also a lifter, kind of enjoys general like strength and hypertrophy or like muscle building training. And he had been dealing with some really bad back pain that was pretty much making him unable to like squat and deadlift and all that sort of stuff. Um, for, oh man, he was dealing with it for like 2 years before we started working together. And he had gone through like the traditional PT route, got a unfortunately cookie cutter rehab plan, saw a little bit of progress, like he was able to get back to regular daily activities without pain, but he really wasn't able to get back to lifting, and his physical therapist didn't have a clear plan to like keep progressing him towards lifting. So for him, his like end goals are to get back to heavier squatting, heavier deadlifting, because he really enjoys hitting heavier barbell compound lifts for building strength, and then also blending that with some like muscle building, kind of hypertrophy work. He prefers a 4-day per week training split where he does 2 upper body sessions, 2 lower body sessions. So that's how we structured his plan. And then we also added in 2 kind of like rehab or accessory days that were focused on some of the deficits that we saw when we did his assessment. So for him, his back hurt worst with, again, squatting and hinging, but also with bending forward or like going into flexion. Aside from that, he also has some deficits in thoracic spine rotation and then also in hip and ankle mobility. Those were kind of like the key areas that we found that he had the most deficit in. So that's what we chose to tackle most aggressively with the rehab work that we implemented. So for him, like I said, we did a 4-day per week training split. So we did upper body sessions on Monday and Thursday, lower body sessions on Tuesday and Friday, and then 2 of those accessory or rehab days on Wednesday and Saturday that he could just do like at home, didn't really need any equipment, didn't need to go to the gym or anything like that. So I'll kind of break down how we addressed each day and kind of my rationale for how we made those choices, and then also like what we've progressed him to. So his upper body days, we really didn't have to modify too heavily because it wasn't really being taxed by his lower back. Really the only thing that his upper body sessions were being limited with was like bent over rows or like non-chest supported row variations. So we start him off with barbell bench press because that's a compound movement that he loves. Then we paired that with seated machine row for a chest supported row variation so he could train his upper back pretty hard, but without aggravating his lower back. For his upper and lower days, he was also on a bit of a time crunch. He could only do like an hour in the gym. So we supersetted movements for non-competing muscle groups to make it a little bit more time efficient. So we did that. And then we went to a seated dumbbell overhead press because that felt better than a standing overhead press, and then a wide grip lat pull down for another back movement. After that, we finished with some shoulder and like bicep tricep isolation work. So incline curls, tricep press downs, and behind the back cable lateral raise. And we we paired the behind the back cable lateral raise with a core stability exercise in the Pallof press and lift. So that worked a little bit of like rotational core control and just built up his capacity for his back. For his second upper body day, we did a very similar approach, but this time we did incline dumbbell presses with a chest supported incline dumbbell row to make it more time efficient and to have another chest supported pulling variation. Then we did a machine chest press and a single arm lat pull down, just to give him a little bit of like single arm work. I like to incorporate single arm and single leg work with a lot of my clients, just because most do have side to side strength deficits, regardless of the injury that they have. But especially for back pain, single leg work can be really, really beneficial because you can train the legs hard with minimal to no like loading on the back. Then we ended the day just like we did on Mondays with some preacher curl work, more tricep work, direct lateral raise work, and then a kettlebell dead bug for some more like ab and core work. The lower body days were obviously a bit more modified because that's what he was having troubles with for his training because of his back pain. So we kind of set it up so that each lower body day, so like day 1 or lower body day 1 on Tuesday, he had his main squat variation, which we did a tempo hack squat. So we use the hack squat because that will eliminate some of the core demand from the movement and reduce the loading on the spine. And we also use slow tempos, so 3 seconds down, 3 seconds up, to limit how much weight that he could use for the given rep range. So we had him do 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps for this. And let's say if he normally did like 8 to 10 reps with a regular tempo, he might be able to do 225, 275, something like that. Using this intentionally slow tempo really limited how much weight he could use, so he was down to like 165, 185. And that allowed him to still train his leg hard through the tempo work, but without aggravating his back at all. We paired that with a banded cat camel, which is just a drill to help get his low back moving in different ranges of motion and desensitized to that flex position, which is typically what's aggravating for him. And then from there, we moved on to a superset of single leg hip thrusts, again, using the single leg variations so that he could train the legs hard, but limit loading on the back, and a suitcase carry for some more isometric core work. After that, we finished with a little bit of machine isolation work for his legs. So we did leg extensions, seated hip abductions, and machine calf raises, and paired the machine calf raises with a side plank banded row, which is another isometric kind of core drill that focuses more on like oblique and like rotational control. His second lower body day on Friday is a very similar like structure. So we had his main hinge variation, which for him was a tempo dumbbell RDL. Again, we limited the volume a little bit, so most of his upper body work was done for like sets of 3. This one was done for only 2 sets, and we also used the slow tempo, again, to force him to use less load and therefore aggravate his back a lot less. Pair that with the sideline windmill to, again, open up the lumbar spine and thoracic spine. And from there, we moved on to a reverse lunge, so a single leg kind of squatting pattern to train the quads and glutes quite a bit harder while sparing the back, and a bird dog row for some more core strength. And then just like lower body day 1, we ended with some machine isolation work. So leg curls to hit the hamstrings harder, seated hip adduction to hit the adductors harder, and machine calf raises again. And we paired those with plank shoulder taps. So again, another kind of like isometric core stability, core strength movement. And then on Wednesdays and Saturdays, we had him do the same movements both of those days. That way he could actually get like consistent training and like work for those problem areas that we found. So we started him with seated Jefferson curls. Again, that's a like spine flexion movement. We just did body weight to begin with to avoid any like loading of the spine, and we used a slow tempo and just had him move through a comfortable range of motion so that we could get his back used to moving in different positions. Because even though most of the lifts that we're doing in the gym are in a very neutral spine position, and that can be very beneficial in the beginning, some things that we do in the gym and a lot of the stuff they do outside the gym don't happen in neutral spine. They happen in like different positions and like kind of like weird positions maybe of your back that again are outside of neutral. And if you don't train those, especially when trying to deal with a back injury, then you don't actually prepare your back to handle that stuff. So when you do try to move into that position or do something in that range of motion in the gym or just in daily life, you're at a much higher risk of a flare-up. So we had those on both days, and then we did some half knee and band rotations to work on his thoracic spine mobility, and then some hip internal rotation work, which was his probably like biggest range of motion deficit, and then some banded ankle flexibility work. So that's how we structured his initial program. Again, much more heavily modified lower body movements because that's what would aggravate his back, and minimal kind of modification for upper body training, only in really the chest supported pulling. We sprinkled kind of core work throughout each of the 4 main training sessions so that he could get a little bit more exposure to core training and build up his core and lower back in a time efficient manner, and then use those 2 accessory days to really attack the mobility deficits that he's had. He's been doing great. Him and I have been working together for almost 6 months now. He's like 95% pain-free. He's back to pretty heavy like squatting and deadlifting. And we've actually introduced some Olympic weightlifting movements for him, like power cleans, power snatches, stuff like that, just because he wanted to try to like get into that sort of training if his back started to really feel a lot better. And it's been going great. So how we kind of progressed him is we took the movements that were much more modified in the beginning, like the tempo hack squats and the tempo RDLs, and we slowly progressed those variations as his back tolerated more training stress. So from the slow tempo hack squats, we then moved to like regular tempo hack squats, and then we moved to slower tempo box squats through a partial range of motion to limit depth and the weight. And then just slowly progress the tempo and the depth of the box until we just had him doing regular back squats. And he's been training them pretty heavy now for like heavy sets of 3 to 5 because that's what he wanted to do, and really hasn't caused any flare-ups, which is awesome. Followed a similar progression for the dumbbell RDL, like his main hinge. Slowly progressed the tempo for the RDLs, and then switched him to some like tempo partial range of motion barbell deadlifts, and then we slowly progressed the tempo and the range of motion for the deadlifts until he's just been doing conventional deadlifts from the floor. And summer, he's been doing awesome. Hasn't really had any flare-ups with his like hinge or deadlift training either, and yeah, he's just been doing great. So that's kind of how we take a program, or rather take somebody's situation and develop a program specifically for it. So it's highly individualized to their schedule, their injury, of course, training preferences, training goals, all that sort of stuff. I have people who have like crazy schedules, like new parents only doing 2 or 3 like very short sessions per week, all the way up to people who are doing like 6, 7 pretty like hard kind of complete training sessions per week because that's what their schedule allows for and that's what they really enjoy.